Ever wonder what life was like before kings, queens, and empires? Imagine a time when no human ruled over another. For hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors lived in small, egalitarian groups. They were hunter-gatherers, moving with the seasons, guided by experience and instinct. In these societies, there were no commanders, no subjects. Everyone was an equal, and decisions were made together. Respect was earned, not demanded. An experienced hunter might lead the chase. A wise elder might suggest a new camp, but no one had the authority to give orders. Survival was a collective effort, and everyone played their part. But this world of equals couldn't last forever. As human populations grew, life became far more complex. The agricultural revolution rooted people to one place. Suddenly, there was land to defend, harvests to manage, and surplus food to store. These weren't just simple survival decisions anymore. They were logistical nightmares, affecting hundreds, even thousands of people. Conflicts over resources became more frequent and more deadly. The old ways of consensus and cooperation started to crumble under the pressure. The need for order, for a final say, grew stronger with each passing generation. This is the crucible in which the first king was forged. He didn't appear overnight, draped in gold and sitting on a throne. He was likely a big man, a charismatic and capable individual who excelled in what his community needed most. In times of war, he was the bravest warrior. During a famine, he was the shrewdest manager of food stores. When disputes threatened to tear the community apart, he was the most trusted mediator. People didn't just follow him out of habit. They followed him because their lives depended on it. His authority was informal at first, granted by the people in moments of crisis. But temporary power has a way of becoming permanent. As crises became more frequent, people grew accustomed to turning to this one leader for answers. His decisions started to shape the community's future. He would organize defenses, oversee the construction of granaries, and dispense justice. His children, having grown up in a household of influence, were often seen as natural successors. Slowly but surely, what started as earned respect solidified into inherited power. Obedience was no longer a choice. It became a duty, an expectation. The leader's word became law. This transformation from a respected leader to a hereditary ruler was one of the most profound shifts in human history. It created social hierarchy, dividing people into rulers and the ruled. This new structure brought stability and allowed for the creation of cities, large-scale projects, and complex civilizations. But it also came at a cost. It introduced inequality, oppression, and the concentration of power into the hands of a few. The story of the first king is the story of how we traded our freedom for security, our equality for order. It's a bargain that has defined human civilization ever since. If you found this journey into the past interesting, be sure to subscribe for more. The first topic is life before rulers. Have you ever wondered what life was like before kings, presidents, or bosses? Before anyone had the power to tell others what to do? It might sound like chaos, but for thousands of years, this was how humanity lived. It was a world without permanent rulers, where survival depended not on commands, but on cooperation. Imagine a small group of early humans, maybe 30 or 40 people, navigating a vast and dangerous landscape. There's no king, no chief, no one in charge all the time. Instead, leadership was like a tool picked up by whoever needed it most. When it was time to hunt, who would you follow? Not the person with the loudest voice, but the one who knew the animal tracks, the one whose aim was true. The strongest hunter would naturally take the lead, guiding the party, making the crucial decisions. But once the hunt was over and the food was brought back, their authority dissolved. They were just another member of the group again. If a dangerous storm was brewing, or it was time to move to new territory, the group wouldn't turn to the hunter. They'd look to the elders, the ones who had seen countless seasons pass. Their memories were the group's library, filled with knowledge about safe paths, hidden water sources, and the signs of changing weather. Their guidance was respected because their experience was proven. Leadership wasn't a title. It was a temporary role, earned through skill and trust, and it shifted constantly, depending on the situation. In these early societies, the concept of ownership as we know it just didn't exist. Nobody owned the land. How could you? The land was for everyone, a shared resource that provided for all. Nobody owned another person, and most importantly, nobody owned power. Power wasn't something you could hoard or accumulate. In fact, trying to do so would have been seen as bizarre, even dangerous. Think about it from a survival perspective. If one person decided to keep all the food from a successful hunt, what would happen? The rest of the group would starve. A starving group is a weak group, vulnerable to predators, disease, and rival groups. Hoarding wasn't just selfish. It was a direct threat to everyone's survival, including the hoarder. Therefore, resources were shared. When a large animal was brought down, the meat was distributed among every family. This wasn't about being nice or following a moral code. Equality wasn't an abstract ideal. It was a practical, life-saving strategy. The group's strength was the sum of its parts, and everyone needed to be strong for the whole to thrive. So, how was order maintained without laws, police, or prisons? The answer lies in social pressure and reputation. Your standing in the group was everything. It was built on your skills, your willingness to contribute, and your wisdom. If you're a skilled toolmaker, a gifted storyteller, or a patient teacher for the young, you earned respect. Your voice would carry weight in group discussions. On the other hand, if you were lazy, unreliable, or consistently made bad decisions that endangered others, you would lose that respect. People would simply stop listening to you. If your poor judgment led to a failed hunt or put the group in danger, your influence would vanish. There were no formal punishments, no written rules to break. The community itself was the judge and jury. Your reputation was your currency, and if you squandered it, you had nothing. But what happened if someone's behavior became a genuine threat? What if a member was consistently violent, stole from others, or refused to cooperate at all? The group's response was simple but brutal. Ostracism. They could be ignored, cast out, or simply left behind. In a world teeming with predators and hardship, being alone was a death sentence. The fear of abandonment was the ultimate deterrent, a far more powerful force than any written law. Trust was the invisible thread holding society together, and breaking that trust meant being cut loose. This system of flexible leadership and shared resources worked remarkably well for an incredibly long time, far longer than any kingdom or empire has ever lasted. It was perfectly suited for small, mobile groups of hundreds, but nothing lasts forever. The world was changing, and humanity was changing with it. One of the biggest drivers of this change was the agricultural revolution. As humans learned to cultivate crops and domesticate animals, they began to settle down in one place. Populations started to grow. A small band of 50 people might become a village of 500, and then a town of a few thousand. And with more people came more problems. Think about the challenges. A larger population needs more food, more resources, and more space. Suddenly, that piece of land wasn't just a temporary foraging ground. It was your farm, the source of your family's survival for generations. Disputes that were once minor could now escalate. Who gets the most fertile land? Who has rights to the water from the river? What happens when a neighbor's livestock wanders into your crops? In a small group, these issues could be resolved through a community discussion. Everyone knew everyone else, and social pressure could smooth things over. But in a village of 1,000 people, that becomes impossible. Shared decision-making, once a strength, became a weakness. It was too slow, too complicated. Trying to get everyone to agree on a course of action was like herding cats. Conflicts also became more frequent and more intense, not just within the group, but between different groups. As settlements grew, they began to compete for land and resources. Raids became a serious threat. A small, leaderless group might be able to defend itself against a predator, but how could it organize a defense against 100 armed raiders from a rival village? Who would rally the defenders? Who would plan the strategy? The old, fluid system of leadership wasn't equipped to handle large-scale warfare. The very success of humanity created a crisis. The egalitarian, cooperative model that had served our ancestors for millennia was starting to break down under the weight of its own success. The world had become more complex, more crowded, and more dangerous. The old ways were no longer enough. People began to realize that for the community to survive, they needed something more. They needed a more permanent, centralized form of authority. Someone who could make quick decisions, enforce rules, and lead the defense of the community. This was the turning point. Out of the chaos and the growing pains of civilization, a new idea began to take hold. The idea of a permanent leader, a chief, a warlord, a king. Someone whose authority didn't disappear after the hunt was over. Someone who could command, who could punish, and who could protect. The transition wasn't immediate, and it wasn't always peaceful, but the need was there. Humanity stood on the precipice, about to trade the freedom of the small group for the security of a larger society. The age of equality was ending, and the age of rulers was about to begin. The world would never be the same. The second topic is when leadership became power. Have you ever wondered where kings and rulers came from? It wasn't like someone just woke up one day, put on a crown, and declared, "I'm in charge now." The story is far more complex, and it starts not with a grab for power, but with a desperate need for survival. Let's travel back in time, to an era before thrones and kingdoms, to understand how leadership first became power. Imagine a small, early, human community. Life is taug, dangers are everywhere. Predators, rival groups, natural disasters. In this world, decisions are made collectively. The group discusses, argues, and eventually reaches a consensus. Everyone has a voice, because everyone's survival is at stake. There are no leaders, only members of a community working together. But then, a crisis hits. A fierce predator is stalking the village, or a neighboring tribe launches a surprise attack. Panic sets in. The slow process of group discussion is now a deadly liability. In these moments of chaos, all eyes turn to one person. Who is this person? They're not necessarily the strongest or the loudest. They're the one who thinks clearly under pressure, the one who makes a decisive call while others are frozen in fear. Maybe they have a knack for strategy, seeing a weakness in the enemy's formation that no one else noticed. Or perhaps they have an unshakable calm that inspires confidence in others. Follow me, they might say, and we'll get through this. And people do. They follow. Not because they've been ordered to, but because in that moment, following feels like the only path to safety. When the dust settles and the danger passes, something amazing happens. Things go back to normal. The crisis leader puts down their spear and goes back to being a hunter, a gatherer, an equal member of the tribe. Their authority was temporary, granted only for the duration of the emergency. It wasn't a position, it was a role they stepped into when needed. No one thought of them as a ruler. They were just the person who was good at handling a crisis. This pattern might repeat itself several times. Another attack, another food shortage, another dangerous journey, and each time the group looks to that same individual. Repetition is a powerful thing. It creates habits, both in our minds and in our societies. With each crisis, the community's reliance on this one person grows. The path to their leadership becomes well-worn. It becomes an automatic response. Danger. Go find them. The decision-making process starts to shortcut. Instead of a full group discussion, someone might say, let's just ask them what to do. It's faster. Slowly, reluctantly, the community begins to cede its collective decision-making power. It's not a conscious choice, but a gradual shift driven by efficiency and the desire for security. The leader's influence starts to linger even after the crisis is over. Their opinion carries more weight in peacetime discussions. Their voice is heard a little louder. Now, let's introduce another crucial element: control over resources. A leader who successfully organizes a hunt has a say in how the meat is divided. A leader who plans the farming and harvest has influence over the grain stores. This control isn't necessarily malicious at first. It's practical. The person who organized the effort is in the best position to manage the rewards. But this control creates a new dynamic of dependency. If you want a good share of food, you need to stay on good terms with the person managing it. If you want your family to be safe within the protected part of the settlement, you need the approval of the person who organized its defense. This is where the shift from leadership to power really accelerates. Authority is no longer just about good ideas or bravery in a crisis. It's now tied to tangible things that everyone needs to survive. Agreement starts to transform into obedience. Before, you followed because you agreed with the plan. Now, you might follow because you need the resources the leader controls. Discussions are replaced with orders. The leader doesn't need to persuade everyone anymore. They just need to command. Their temporary authority is crystallizing into a permanent structure of command. And then there's the most potent ingredient of all: fear. This isn't just fear of the outside world. A new kind of fear begins to grow inside the community itself. Fear of a leader isn't always born from cruelty. It can come from a simple calculation of risk. Disobeying the person who has successfully protected you time and time again feels dangerous. What if you're wrong? What if your defiance leads the group to ruin? The stability they offer feels much safer than the chaos of dissent. Furthermore, as the leader's power grows, so does their ability to enforce their will. They might have a group of loyal followers, the ones who benefited most from their leadership, who act as their enforcers. Disobedience is no longer just a disagreement. It's a challenge to the established order, and it might have serious consequences. People start to obey not just out of trust or respect, but out of fear of what might happen if they don't. The leader who was once a protector now starts to look like a ruler. The guidance they offered is now perceived as dominance. This delicate, dangerous mix of necessity, reliance, control, and fear is the crucible in which power was forged. The first king didn't conquer his own people. He was created by them, piece by piece, crisis by crisis. He emerged from their need for a faster, more effective way to survive. The person who was once the community's greatest asset, their problem solver, their protector, slowly became their master. The line was crossed when temporary leadership became permanent rule, when the power granted by the people was no longer something they could easily take back. And with that, the very fabric of human society was changed forever. The age of equality was over, and the age of hierarchy had begun. This transition wasn't an event. It was a long, slow process. A journey from community to kingdom, from consensus to command. The birth of power structures wasn't just a political change. It reshaped human relationships, our psychology, and our destiny. Understanding this origin story is crucial, because the dynamics of leadership, trust, and fear that created the first king are still playing out in our world today, in every corner of society, from the office to the world stage. The third topic is fear, protection, and obedience. Have you ever wondered why we have kings, presidents, and leaders? Why do we, as a species, tend to organize ourselves into It's a story that goes way back, a story written in fear, survival, and a simple, powerful trade-off. Let's travel back in time, long before written history, to the dawn of human society. Imagine small, nomadic groups of early humans. What did they fear most? A saber-toothed tiger leaping from the bushes, a harsh winter with no food, starvation. Their fears were immediate, tangible, and came from the natural world. Survival was a daily struggle, and leadership, if it existed at all, was fluid. The best hunter might lead the hunt. The wisest elder might decide where to camp. Power was temporary and based on immediate skill. But then, something incredible happened. We learned to farm. The agricultural revolution changed everything. For the first time, we could stay in one place, grow our own food, and store it for the future. Our small bands grew into larger villages, then towns. Life should have gotten easier, right? Less dangerous. Well, yes and no. The saber-toothed tiger was less of a problem, but a new, more complicated fear emerged. The fear of each other. With permanent settlements came ownership. This is my land. This is my grain. This is my home. And with ownership came conflict. Suddenly, your biggest threat wasn't a wild animal. It was your neighbor. Disputes over resources, mates, and social status became a part of daily life. The more people lived together, the greater the potential for chaos. An argument could escalate into a brawl. A theft could lead to a blood feud. The very thing that made us successful living together in large numbers also created a new, internal danger. This is where the idea of a permanent leader, a proto-king, truly takes root. A strong figure steps up. Maybe he was the most successful warrior, or perhaps the most charismatic negotiator. He offers a simple deal. Follow me, and I will protect you. Protection became the ultimate currency of power. This leader organized a guard, trained fighters, and established a system for defense. When a rival group threatened the village, people didn't have time for a town hall meeting. They didn't debate strategy. They looked to one person for a decisive command. In that moment, safety and obedience became fused together. To obey the leader was to be safe. To question him was to risk everything. This created a powerful psychological loop. Fear worked in two ways now. There was the external fear of enemies, raiders who wanted to steal your hard-earned food. But there was also an internal fear. The fear of the leader's authority. What would happen if you disobeyed? You might be cast out of the community, left to fend for yourself, or you could face direct punishment. In a world where belonging to the group meant survival, exclusion was a death sentence. Slowly but surely, obedience shifted from a choice to an expectation. It became the bedrock of this new social order. But what really cemented this power structure wasn't just force. It was belief. People began to genuinely believe that their entire society, their very existence, depended on this single leader. They started to think, without him, we would descend into chaos. We would be destroyed from within or without. This belief was more powerful than any army. It meant the leader's authority wasn't just physical. It was psychological. He didn't need to be present in every dispute. His rules, his presence, were felt everywhere. The idea of his authority was enough to keep most people in line. This is a crucial step in the development of government. Power becomes abstract. An institution, not just one person's physical strength. Over generations, this system evolved. The deal that started as protection for obedience slowly transformed. Protection began to look a lot like control. The leader's decisions were no longer up for discussion. His word became law, often backed by a narrative of divine right or special wisdom. Why was he in charge? Because the gods willed it, or because his bloodline was destined to rule? This narrative made questioning him not just foolish, but sacrilege. Fear shaped loyalty, and that loyalty, in turn, gave a leader even more power. It was a self-reinforcing cycle. Humans, faced with the constant anxiety of a chaotic and dangerous world, accepted this hierarchy. It felt safer. It felt more predictable than the terrifying uncertainty of total freedom. They made a fundamental trade. They gave up a measure of individual freedom in exchange for collective stability. Think about how profound that shift is. We went from small, egalitarian groups to complex, stratified societies with a single person at the top. This wasn't a conscious decision made in a single day. It was a gradual process, an evolutionary adaptation to the new challenges we created for ourselves by becoming successful. And once this structure of obedience and authority took root, it became incredibly difficult to remove. It became the default setting for human civilization for thousands of years. It's written into our stories, our laws, and deep within our collective psychology. So, the next time you look at the structures of power in our world, remember its ancient origins. It all started with a simple, primal fear and the promise of protection. A promise that created order from chaos, but also laid the foundation for control, for power, and for the world we live in today. It's a story that's still unfolding as we continue to negotiate that ancient bargain between freedom and security. The fourth topic is the birth of authority and law. Ever wondered how humans went from small, leaderless groups to sprawling kingdoms ruled by a single person? It's a story about a massive shift in how we think, how we live, and how we see ourselves. Let's dive into the moment when authority and law were born. In the earliest human societies, leadership was often temporary and based on skill. The best hunter led the hunt. The wisest elder resolved a dispute. But this wasn't permanent power. Once the task was done, the leader was just another member of the group. Power was fluid, earned through respect, not demanded by rank. Obedience wasn't a given. It was a choice, based on trust and immediate need. This system worked for millennia in small, tight-knit communities where everyone knew each other. But as populations grew, everything changed. Imagine a village swelling into a town. Suddenly, you're living alongside hundreds, maybe thousands, of people you don't know personally. The old ways of resolving conflicts through personal reputation and community discussion start to break down. Disputes become more frequent, and cooperation becomes harder to maintain. In this growing chaos, a new kind of leader emerges. This isn't just the best hunter or the wisest elder. This is someone who can command, who can organize large groups, and most importantly, who can enforce their will. This new leader, let's call them the first chief or king, couldn't be everywhere at once. Their power couldn't rely solely on their physical presence or charisma. To maintain control over a growing population, they needed something more systematic, more permanent. They needed rules, not the informal social norms of the past, but something much stronger. This was the birth of structured authority. These first rules were likely unwritten, but they were crystal clear and universally understood. They established a hierarchy. They dictated who had the right to speak with authority, who was allowed to mete out punishment, and who held the ultimate power over life and death. The king's word wasn't just advice anymore. It was a command. And this is where something fascinating happens. Law is born not from a single decree, but from repetition. When the king made a decision, and that decision was followed, it set a precedent. When similar situations arose, people expected the same outcome. The king's judgment, repeated over and over, slowly hardened from a simple decision into a tradition. And as generations passed, that tradition morphed into an expectation. People began to see the king's way as the only way. This expectation, this deeply ingrained sense of how things should be, became the foundation of early law. This transformation had a profound impact on human morality. For tens of thousands of years, our sense of right and wrong was shaped by fundamental instincts. Empathy for our kin, cooperation for survival, and the fear of social exclusion. If you harmed someone in your small group, the consequences were direct and personal. You faced the anger of their family, and you risked being cast out, which was often a death sentence. Morality was a negotiation between individuals and the community. But with the rise of a central authority, this all changed. Right and wrong were no longer just about empathy or survival. They became defined from the top down. What the king allowed was deemed right. What the king forbade was deemed wrong. An act wasn't just harmful, it was illegal. This externalized morality shifting the focus from internal conscience to external compliance. This also revolutionized the concept of justice. Before, if someone wronged you, your family might seek revenge. It was a personal, often bloody, and cyclical affair. Feuds could last for generations, destabilizing the entire community. But a centralized authority offered a new model. Instead of personal revenge, you had state-sanctioned punishment. Justice was no longer a private matter. It was administered from above. The king or their representatives would hear the case and decide the consequence. This introduced a new kind of order, replacing the endless cycle of vengeance with a predictable system of punishment. It was a monumental step towards stability, but it came at a cost. Individuals gave up their right to personal retribution in exchange for the security of state-enforced order. The rise of authority didn't just change our societies, it changed our very identities. In a small tribe, your primary identity was your membership in the group. You were a part of a collective we. But under a king, a new identity was forged. You became a subject. Your loyalty was no longer just to your family or your immediate community. Your primary allegiance shifted upwards to the ruler. This created a new social glue, binding together vast numbers of people who might have no other connection to one another besides their shared loyalty to the same king. And with this came another revolutionary idea: power as an inheritable commodity. In earlier societies, leadership was earned. You couldn't pass down your hunting skill or your wisdom to your child. But kingship was different. It became a position, an office that could be passed from father to son. Power was no longer just a personal attribute. It was a possession that could be protected, expanded, and transferred through a bloodline. This is what allowed dynasties to form and kingdoms to persist beyond the lifetime of a single charismatic leader. The first king, then, didn't just rule over people. He ruled over ideas. He defined what was orderly, what was true, and what the consequences were for stepping out of line. He controlled the narrative. By establishing a system of laws and punishments, he shaped the very framework of reality for his subjects. The world became a more predictable, more organized place. And once authority became embedded in law and tradition, kingship stopped being a temporary solution to a problem. It became a permanent institution. The idea of a society without a king became unthinkable. This wasn't just a political development, it was a psychological one. We, as a species, became accustomed to being ruled. This pivotal moment in human history didn't just create rulers and subjects. It created the entire architecture of the state as we know it. It laid the groundwork for complex governments, legal systems, and national identities. The birth of authority and law set us on a new path, one that would lead to empires, revolutions, and the complex world we inhabit today. It was the moment we traded a degree of personal freedom for a new kind of collective security, a bargain that continues to shape our societies and our lives to this very day. The fifth topic is the legacy of the first king. Imagine a world without kings, without presidents, without anyone in charge. A time when leadership wasn't a title, but a temporary job. You were the best hunter, you led the hunt, the wisest elder, you settled a dispute. But once the crisis passed, so did your authority. Power was fluid, situational, earned moment by moment. Then, something changed. One person, somewhere in the distant past, didn't step down. For reasons we can only guess, maybe a prolonged war, a famine, or just sheer force of will, their authority became permanent. This was the birth of the first king, and with that single act, the course of human history was forever altered. The first king probably didn't see himself as a king. He was just a leader who stayed a leader. He didn't know he was creating a legacy, but he did. Suddenly, power was no longer just about skill. It became about position. It was institutional. This wasn't just a leader of a hunt. This was the leader of the people. And to see there, this new model of permanent authority was incredibly effective. It provided stability and a clear chain of command. Neighboring groups, seeing the success and strength of a unified people under a single ruler, quickly copied the model. It was a social technology that spread like wildfire. Kingship became the blueprint for order, for defense, and for control. This shift from temporary leader to permanent ruler had profound consequences. To solidify their rule, these new kings needed more than just strength. They needed legitimacy. So, over time, they built an entire framework around their power. They claimed their authority wasn't just earned, it was divinely appointed. The gods themselves had chosen them to rule. This made questioning the king the same as questioning the divine order of the universe. Very risky move. Power became hereditary. The king's son would be the next king. ensuring a smooth transition and keeping power within a single family line for generations. And to make their power visible, they created symbols. Crowns weren't just fancy hats. They were a physical manifestation of a divine right to rule. Elaborate thrones weren't just chairs. They were the center of the kingdom's power. Complex rituals and ceremonies weren't just traditions. They were public performances designed to reinforce the king's unique and elevated status. Laws were written down, not just to create order, but to codify the king's authority and the subjects' obligations. What began as a practical solution for a group survive a way to organize for protection slowly evolved into a system of dominance. But the legacy of the first king wasn't just about politics and power structures. It fundamentally rewired how humans saw themselves and their place in the world. Before kings, human societies were likely much more egalitarian. But with the rise of a permanent ruler, a new concept took root. Hierarchy, the idea that some people are born to rule and others are born to be ruled, started to seem natural, inevitable. Obedience wasn't just a choice. It became a virtue, a duty, and with hierarchy came something humanity had never experienced on this scale before. Institutionalized inequality. The gap between the ruler and the ruled became a chasm, and this structure was accepted as the way things were supposed to be. The first king's legacy is a tapestry woven with threads of light and shadow. With kings came things we now take for granted in any large society. They drew borders on maps, creating the very idea of nations and territory. Of course, with borders came wars fought over them. They levied taxes to fund armies, build infrastructure, and support the royal courts. This created complex economic systems, but also burdened the common person. They established vast bureaucracies to manage their kingdoms, giving rise to writing, record-keeping, and organized administration. This new order provided unprecedented stability. For the first time, huge societies could form, bringing together hundreds of thousands, even millions of people under a shared identity. Great cities were built, trade flourished over vast distances, and monumental works of art and architecture were created, all testaments to the power of a centralized authority to mobilize resources and labor. This was the dawn of what we call civilization. But this progress came at a steep price. The same power that built pyramids also enslaved the people who built them. The stability kings offered often came in the form of brutal oppression. The order they created was an order where the vast majority had little to no freedom. This is the crucial dual legacy of the first king. He brought both peace and violence, order and oppression, progress and immense suffering. He opened the door to the grand experiment of civilization, but he also unlocked the potential for tyranny and the systemic abuse of power. Every story of a benevolent philosopher king is matched by 100 stories of a cruel despot. For every period of cultural flourishing under a wise ruler, there's an era of darkness under a foolish one. The first king gave humanity a powerful tool, but it was a double-edged sword that has been wielded for both good and ill ever since. Even today, thousands of years later, we live in the shadow of that first king. Look at our world. The very concept of a state, a government with a monopoly on power, traces its lineage directly back to that first moment. Presidents, prime ministers, and dictators are all modern inheritors of that original mantle of leadership. Our institutions, our legal systems, our ideas about authority and citizenship, they are all echoes of the structures first built to support a king. The way we instinctively look to a leader in a crisis, the way our societies are organized into hierarchies, it all goes back to that fundamental shift. The first king didn't just rule a tribe. In a way, he ruled the future. He set humanity on a new path, and once we were on it, there was no going back. The genie of institutional power was out of the bottle. For all its flaws and all its benefits, the world we inhabit today was shaped by that unknown individual who decided, for the first time, that leadership was not a temporary role, but a permanent throne. The story of the first king is a story of how we, as a species, agreed to be ruled, and it's a legacy we are still grappling with every single day. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey into the past interesting, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the ideas that shaped our world. See you next time.